So, the speaker for today is Dr. William Davies, consultant psychologist and head of clinical psychology of the APT. Post-qualification courses written by him have been studied by over 125,000 mental health professionals, meaning that his input has influenced interventions with literally millions of people. So it's all yours, Will.
Lovely, lovely. Well, hello everybody. Now, this is a start. This is session one of a four-part series, and it's four parts. This one's biology. Next week will be, well, no, in 2 weeks' time is behavior, and 2 weeks after that will be relationships, and 2 weeks after that will be thinking style. So it's every 2 weeks, and on alternate weeks, we're looking at particular therapeutic strategies like DBT, motivational interviewing, acceptance and commitment therapy, and so on. So it alternates. But let's concentrate on today. Leading a rewarding life, biology. Now, biology used to be everything. It used to be, you didn't used to have a split between mind and body. That wasn't how it was. It was all reckoned to be within one body, and that contained everything. And a lot of people think, me included actually, that we've gone too far the other way, that it's the mind-body dichotomy. And when people have mental problems at all, depression or anxiety or anything else, that those are partly biological. And it's all mixed up in one body, literally. So we're concentrating on biology today quite rightly, I think, is the first one. Because I think if we get our biology right, then we're off to a flying start. It's amazing if you see people who sleep right, eat right, take exercise and so on, are not ill. It's amazing how few of them have mental health problems. It's just one of those things. So it's worth looking at our biology quite carefully, I think. I made a little note there about Bullmore's inflamed mind, because it's just a little illustration. Edward Bullmore, is head of psychiatry at Cambridge University. So I'm inclined to take him seriously. And he tells the story of how he went to the dentist. And he came back of an evening time, and he said he was absolutely textbook depression. He had all the sort of negative thinking, all the things you associate with depression, all this negative thinking and dwelling and brooding and all the rest. And he put it down to the fact that he'd had work done on his teeth. And teeth are actually, the mouth and the teeth are actually quite a sensitive area. So he reckoned that the inflammation inside his body had actually caused the depressive symptomatology for that evening. And sure enough, as the inflammation died away over a day or two, so his depression died away over a day or two. So that was his first illustration before it got him involved and interested in the link-up between body and mind in that way, and it's very convincing. So on we go. I've put a list here. It's sleep, alcohol, and so on. I put sleep in capitals. Well, not capitals. They're extra big, aren't they? And it's because I think it's probably the most important one, and it's the one I want to take most time on. Although the first one we need to look at is illnesses. Don't particularly want to look at them in any great detail. But it does need saying that some illnesses mimic mental health conditions. For example, hypothyroidism and hyperthyroidism, you might like to put in chat to get yourselves used to using chat and talking to Amy. What condition does hypothyroidism mimic, would you say? What mental health condition does hypothyroidism? And you might like, while you're at it, what mental health condition does hyperthyroidism mimic?
Patricia was straight on the button with depression.
Depression for hyper, yeah, hypo.
Everybody's coming in now, and the next one is mimics anxiety.
Brilliant, yeah, spot on. So it's really important. We need to be alert, even though we're psychologists, mental health nurses, psychiatrists, and so on. Whatever we are, we need to be really alert for actual illnesses, physical illnesses that really need addressing. Okay. Well, while we're at it then, we've moved straight on now to the sleep section. I wonder if anybody would like to say who this chap is. You're not likely to bump into him in the street at the moment for a very good reason. And you won't bump into him in this country at the moment.
Yeah, we've got a Russian guy from Capia.
Yes, very good.
Carol has said Navalny.
Absolutely, spot on, yes. Alexei Navalny. And the reason you won't bump into him in the street, either in this country or indeed in Russia, is that he's detained, he's been locked up. He's a dissident, he was poisoned. He came over to Germany to be treated. He's gone back to Russia voluntarily and he's been locked up there. And in messages that he manages to get out of prison, he says he is being tortured. And the mechanism of torture, what are they doing to him to torture him? They are depriving him of sleep. So that is, and nobody quibbles that is like torture. And there's so many people who have immense trouble with their sleep, regular trouble for years and years and years, and it is absolute torture. So it is very important to have a look at. The way I've structured the first half of this sleep section is for us to have a look at a day design for a good night's sleep. Because it's no use going to bed and then starting to think, well, I need a good night's sleep, what am I going to do? You have to think right from the waking up the day before. So let's have a look. First thing is to start the day at the same time every day. You appreciate how those words just changed magically.
It's like seamless, isn't it?
It's great. Start the day at the same time every day. And that's probably the golden rule. If you wanted a golden rule, start the day. Never mind weekends where you have a lie-in, etc. People say, oh, I had a lie-in and oh, it's really important because even when I had a lie-in, I was still really tired. And actually, very often it's because they've had the lie-in. The system, the body does not like sort of fluctuations like that. The most important thing is to get up at the same time every day, Saturdays and Sundays included. So, and then let's have a look at caffeine, because caffeine is probably the most underrated or underestimated substance we consume. While I'm going on, you might like to put in chat, what are the major sources of caffeine for most people? Obviously, we got a cup of coffee there, so that's a clue. But there are other major sources of caffeine during the course of people's days.
And Sam has recommended, Matthew Walker's book, Why We Sleep. And they say that it's fantastic and has a lot of really accessible research if anyone wants to do more reading.
Oh, fantastic. Lovely.
But now we've got a flummox, an influx of messages. Tea, Coke, chocolates, a good old cuppa, Coke, energy drinks, tea, chocolate, tea.
Yeah, very good ones there. Thank you. Tea is a great underrated one because tea has other stuff in it which is kind of relaxing as well, but it certainly has lots of caffeine, about the same as a cup of instant coffee. The big one I was very pleased to see is energy drinks like Red Bull and so on. It's lovely to support Formula One, but on the other hand, Red Bull drinks are very, very high in caffeine, and all energy drinks like that, they rely on caffeine and sugar really.
And we've had a couple of late entries for painkillers.
Oh, painkillers, very well done, yes, very well done. In case you're wondering why painkillers would have caffeine in them, the reason is that caffeine withdrawal causes most people headaches. So painkillers have caffeine in just in case it's due to caffeine withdrawal. Okay, now the thing about caffeine is that it has a 6-hour half-life. So I've done some arithmetic for you. Let's just talk in terms of coffee for the moment, but bear in mind there's lots of other things apart from coffee. Assume we have a cup of coffee at 8 o'clock in the morning. Well, at 2 o'clock the following middle of the night, at 2 a.m. following middle of the night, you've still got 1/8 of that cup of coffee in you, still working away nicely, or not so nicely. Then you have another cup of coffee at 11 a.m. Well, at 2 a.m. the following middle of the night, you've still got 1/6 of that cup of coffee working away nicely, in addition to the 1/8 from your breakfast time cuppa. Then supposing you have a cup of coffee just after lunch, maybe 2 p.m. Well, 1/4 of that will be they're still there at 2 a.m. in addition to the first two. And then if you have perhaps one at 6 p.m. just to get you through the evening, well, almost 1/2 of that will still be there at 2 a.m. So that adds up to, at 2 a.m., you've got roughly a cup of coffee in you. You might as well have drunk your cup of coffee at 2 o'clock in the middle of the night. And people will say quite often, one of the major sort of complaints people have about their sleep is that they wake up in the middle of the night. Well, it's no wonder. The reason they go to sleep before that is the sleep drive is very high and it's overwhelmed the effect of the caffeine. But the sleep drive disappears more quickly than the caffeine does. So the caffeine effectively overwhelms the sleep drive round about 2 or 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, depending on how much coffee you've been drinking.
Zora's got a good question, asking, does this system still work if you have a highly busy day requiring a lot of energy, where you may have burnt off the caffeine?
Yes, no, I'm afraid not. It doesn't work like that. You don't burn off the caffeine. No, I'm afraid not. It's just the same as alcohol. People have all sorts of tricks to think will burn off the alcohol, but it just doesn't work like that, I'm afraid. It just stays with you. And it's kind of worse because you are really tired when you get to bed then, but then you're still awake at 3 a.m. and there's nothing you can do. You can't get rid of that caffeine. So, Amy, I'm just wondering, it might be nice to, I bet of the, what is the best part of 300 people here, I bet there's a lot of people who have sleep problems, and I bet a lot of their patients have sleep problems. Is there any way we can do a sort of a spot poll as to how many people have sleep problems? Or
Okay, we can try doing hands up.
Okay.
Everybody can't find their hands. So if you if you hover over the participants button at the bottom, click on, oh, we've got some nice hands coming up. I don't know why I'm telling everybody. But if click on participants, and then at the bottom, I think it should say raise hand. So at the moment, we've got 70 people with sleep problems. So what was the question actually, Will?
How many people here have sleep problems? Yes, that.
Sleep problems? 73, I think we're and
gosh.
Or 79 now. And
if we add on the people who haven't been able to find their hands to raise, then a few. And Ken, thank you very much. If you put your hands down now, and once we've got our hands down, I wonder if you could put your hand up if you routinely ask of your patients whether they have sleep problems.
Oh, wow.
Still going?
Yeah.
That's fantastic. That's
brilliant.
About 40% of people routinely ask whether their patients have sleep problems. Terrific thing to ask because it's very, very widespread, and it's really kind of very enshrined and mixed up with depression and anxiety, and to a degree psychosis as well. So it's an incredibly important subject. Okay, so caffeine is a real villain. It's endemic, and there's people walking around with their mugs of coffee all the time. But it's just because it's so common, it's really important and really destructive.
And do decaffeinated drinks still have caffeine in?
No, they don't. No. And so that is the effect of caffeine is totally nullified if you have it decaffeinated. So decaf Pepsi or coffee or whatever, yeah.
Lauren says that she switched to decaf 2 years ago, and you can't taste the difference, but you don't get the effects of caffeine. So that's nice.
Yeah. Yes, caffeine is actually tasteless. It has no taste. Sometimes you taste the material they've used for decaffeinating the drink. Right, number 2, nurture the circadian rhythm. Now, most people know that we have a circadian rhythm, or at least that we endeavor to have a circadian rhythm. We are designed to have a circadian rhythm that fits in with the daily routine, the daily rhythm of night and dark, light and dark. And one of the best things you can do, they maintain, is to have half an hour's light and exercise, not light exercise, but in the light, to go outside in the light, just walking around. Doesn't have to be fantastic, strenuous walking, just walking around in the light. And it's the light as much as anything else that is triggering the half of the circadian rhythm that says, here we are, we should be awake, we should be energetic, and so on. So that early morning exercise or, after breakfast exercise in the outdoors is really important. And it's fascinating how people are spending a lot of time now looking at outdoor exercise. And it seems to be the outdoorsness that is working well for people. Go easy on alcohol. Where have we heard this before? And the reason for that, of course, is that it's not that it disrupts your sleep in the sense of waking you up in the middle of the night. It may well not, except to go to the toilet. But it actually disrupts the nature of the sleep you get. So when you wake up in the morning, you might say, oh, that's fantastic, about 8 hours solid sleep, but I don't know why I feel so tired. You still feel tired in spite of having had that sleep. So alcohol and sleep don't go well together. The trouble is that if you are sort of addicted to alcohol, if you got used to it, and then you give it up, it takes a while to get used to having no alcohol, but it ultimately benefits you nicely. Now, look after the bedroom. Now, this is a tricky one because people have read stuff in all sorts of magazines about looking after the bedroom and all this sort of thing. And some of the things that are said are really good and some are not. And I remember talking to one guy, and I looked at, and I was going around his house and saw his bedroom, and it's all sorts of colors. It was red and yellow and goodness knows what. It's such a garish bedroom. And I said to him, I said, how ever do you manage to sleep in this room? And you know what he said? He said, I close my eyes. And that, I thought, well, it's a good answer, actually. Yeah, he wasn't really being smart. He wasn't being, clever. But he was. He said that was literally his answer. I closed my eyes, and I think that's that is a really important kind of observation. And whenever I read in magazines, you should have your bedroom in some mellow colours, etc., etc., I always reminded of that man. Fresh air on it, so I'm not so convinced about garish colours. I think maybe you can have as garish colours as you like. Fresh air, on the other hand, that is an interesting one, because you say, well, why fresh air? People talk about fresh air. And as far as I can make out, the importance of fresh air and sleep is to do with humidity. Now we all have central heating and so on and so forth. The humidity of the air is not what it should be. It's much too dry, and that plays havoc with our breathing mechanism. And we're waking up because we can't breathe very easily. So the idea of the fresh air is that the humidity is there and we breathe more easily. It's not really the amount of oxygen or whatever in the air. It's just that we can breathe more easily, more humid. Well, what about then? What about having a quiet room? Because it's also important to have quiet. Loud noise will certainly wake us up, or quite likely wake us up during shallow sleep periods. So how do we get quiet and fresh air? Well, of course, you can close your window when you go to bed. You can close your window easy enough. That's good. The fresh air is already in by that time, so you can close the window. Still have the humidity. And if you can possibly work out how to get any other quietness into your room, that is great. You can get white noise machines. You can get apps that give you white noise, and soft earbuds that go in your ears to give you white noise. That's quite good, but I quite prefer natural remedies, and acceptance is a good thing to aim at, I think. We'll mention later on that some mindfulness apps have acceptance as a built-in target, notably to accept noise. Because people, apart from the noise associated with noisy bedrooms, people get quite sort of agitated. Why is Why does anybody have such a noisy car or a noisy motorbike and so on? And if you get the acceptance of those kind of things, then it works a lot better. The agitation disappears, if not the noise. Finally, people also use radios or music and so on timers. And they sometimes have the timers set to too long. For example, they might have a timer set to 1 hour and find themselves asleep after 15 minutes. Then their radio or their music goes off, stops after 1 hour, and there's suddenly a silence. And that silence then wakes them up. Just as a loud noise, if the room is silent, a loud noise will wake them up. If they've been used to noise, then the silence wakes them up. So that's a strange one that people are not totally clued into. So they try and have the timer on for, say, half an hour or whatever. If it takes you a quarter of an hour to go to sleep, then have the timer on for half an hour. Then it's not so long as to be a shock when it goes off.
There's a few people advocating for a nice cool bedroom.
Yes.
That's a popular one.
Quite right.
Particularly a nice cool bedroom and a nice warm bed. That sounds nice.
Lovely.
And any thoughts about the duration of sleep?
Yes. The statistic they calculate is the average optimum number of hours. In other words, there is an optimum number of hours for sleep. Everybody has their optimum number of hours. And the average for that at the moment in the UK, I don't know about elsewhere, I'm sorry, but in the UK, it is 7 hours. So if you sleep longer than 7 hours and you're an average person, that is too long, you'll benefit less than if you slept for 7 hours. Likewise, if you're an average person, you sleep for 6 hours, you'll benefit less than if you slept for 7 hours.
Super. And a nice few top tips coming in for sleep as well. Sarah's recommending 17 to 18 degrees for ideally the sleep temperature. Blackout curtains are a nice one.
Yeah.
Self-soothing to help get to sleep.
Yeah.
Some do need 8 hours, I'm afraid.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. So, and some people are saying, what do you think about little naps?
What do you do, what?
What about little naps in the day?
Oh, we'll have a look at that. You can have a nap, but it has implications, I'm afraid. Yeah. We'll look at the sleep drive, and what a little nap does to your sleep drive.
So with regards to your radio, if you're enjoying an audiobook and then you fall asleep, and it's best to keep it on all night?
You put it on all night?
To leave it on all night rather than put it on a timer?
Oh, yes, no. Oh, I see what you mean. You could have it on all night, but at one stage, people tried to learn things while they were asleep. People researched what happened if you had information coming in while you were asleep. And the net result was that it does actually disrupt your sleep a bit. But having said that, I've met people who have had stuff on all night long and they report it being perfectly fine. So I do worry about your hearing though, because it does wear the hearing down.
Okay.
Have a wind down routine. The most popular and sort of advocated wind down routine is to read a book. Seems to be something about the movement across the page of the eyes and so on, an actual book, real one, not listening to a book on audio or whatever, but actually reading it. But in a way, it doesn't really matter too much, so long as it's a wind down routine, or it doesn't seem to me to matter too much, so long as you have a nice wind down routine. You don't jump straight from your work computer into bed and hope to go to sleep, or straight from a very frightening film, likewise. So, nice wind down routine. I think this is an important concept, that we train ourselves to see sleep or to see our bed as a temporary refuge. Because a lot of people with sleep problems have really big worries sometimes, really big worries, like they may be having their house repossessed, their job may be in jeopardy, their relationship may have broken up, whatever it is. They got really, really big worries, things that really need addressing. And they will come repeatedly. But whatever worries we have, we can train ourselves to see sleep as a temporary refuge or respite, sanctuary. And the idea of having it as a temporary thing is very important, I think, because if you said to somebody who's got big problems like that, oh, just forget your problems and go to sleep, you'll be ridiculed, you know, they say it's ridiculous. How do you expect me to forget the fact that my house is being repossessed? But if you say temporarily forget that, because it needs addressing importantly in the morning, but the best thing you can do during the night time is just you should temporarily forget it. It is still difficult, it still needs training. But if we set ourselves the task of training ourselves to see sleep as a temporary respite and sanctuary, then that is achievable, actually. Quite an important concept, I think. Now, we're coming on to the question you asked, Amy, on behalf of people about a nap. Go to bed only when you are tired. Now, there's immediately a conflict because ideally you want to go roughly at the same time each night because of the circadian rhythm. But the more important of those two things is to go to bed only when you are tired. If you're not tired, there's a sleep drive. That's an important concept in CBT for insomnia, the sleep drive. And if the sleep drive has not built up sufficiently, all that's going to happen when you go to bed is you're going to lie there awake. And that agitates people and you get into a vicious cycle then. So go to bed only when you are tired. But, and here's another thing that people report and really undermines them, you must get to bed before you doze off downstairs. If you doze off downstairs or on the sofa or whatever, and then say, oh, obviously it's time I went to bed, you go to bed and you find you are wide awake. That's because that little doze has reset the sleep drive clock, and your sleep drive is now insufficient to put you back to sleep again. And you lie there for a couple of hours maybe while the sleep drive builds up again to put you to sleep. So it's quite general. If you're going to go to sleep, do it in bed, not on the sofa. So that's, to my mind, that's a really important slide we're looking at there. This, on the other hand, is a very contentious one, I think. It's a very, very commonly given advice, and I'm assured in the papers that this is, in the research papers, that this is absolutely correct. The best thing you can do if you wake up in the middle of the night is to get up. So you wake up at 3 a.m. and you're sort of wide awake, then the advice is that you should get up. Especially if you've been awake for more than 20 minutes, you get up and do something. And how many people do you think do that? If you advise them to do that in the middle of the night, how many people do you think actually do it? Nobody that I've met. So it's good advice, and well, it might be good advice. Apparently, it's backed up by the research. But it's great advice if you're a clinician, because you can always say, well, the reason you're not sleeping is you haven't done what I told you. I told you to get up at 3 a.m. when you wake up, and you're not doing it. So what do you expect? Well, it's asking a lot of people, frankly. Dark, miserable night, and we get up and do what? So whatever you think, if you can get up and you can set up the house that is nice and there's things to do and so on, then fine. If not, then maybe not.
What do you think about medication, Will? Sleep medication?
Oh, well, I've got an open mind on it, to be frank. I think the very worst thing is not to be able to sleep. That really is torture, both literal and metaphorical. It's a terrible, terrible thing not to be able to sleep. The problems with medication are alleged to be twofold. One is that it disrupts the natural sleep, so maybe the quality of sleep isn't as good as it might be. I'm not convinced by that. Having spoken to people who have resorted to sleep medication, they seem to do rather well on it, as far as I can see. The other problem people describe is that people get addicted to it or habituate to it to a degree, so you need more and more of it. And other people just simply don't like the idea of sleep medication.
Super. There's a few people enjoying getting up during the night as well and saying how well it works. And a few people saying they just couldn't do it. Yeah.
Well done to people who do get up. I mean, I'd be interested in how they manage that, because I have literally never come across any patient who has said, right, I did that and it worked really well. I've just not managed to persuade anybody to do it.
No, there's an idea that you could do the ironing. So there is plenty to do at night.
Well, that's enough to tempt you out of bed, isn't it?
Yeah, or a nice dull book.
A nice dull book, okay.
Yeah.
And that takes us around full circle to, because we started 24 hours ago at get up at the same time every day, and here we are getting up at the same time every day. And it's really important, even if you had a disrupted night, you still get up at whatever time it is. 7 o'clock, this clock would have us believe. Okay, so there we are. That is our day. But I just want to
we've got another topic that's been advocated by a few people.
Yep.
Breathing during the night, in for 4 seconds, hold for 7 seconds, out for 8 seconds, repeat 3 or 4 times, and apparently it resets the parasympathetic nervous system.
Fantastic. That's very like what the TIP acronym in DBT. Yeah, paced breathing. Yeah, very, very good. Okay, let's move on. Use bed mainly for sleep. The idea here is very straightforward. You simply associate bed with sleep, not with doing your emails and whatever else you reading or watching TV, computer games and so on. So we associate bed with sleep rather than pretty much anything else. Some people say, well, I know perfectly well why I can't sleep. And you think, well, why haven't you sorted that out then? And they haven't addressed it. Well, if you are one of the very, very few people who actually knows why they can't sleep and hasn't actually prioritized addressing it, I would urge you to do so, because sleep is just such an important thing. Can I sleep in the day? Well, the answer is yes, you can. But there's 2 things that apply to it just as much as we've said already. The first one is it's the circadian rhythm. So if you're going to sleep in the day, do it every day. Have your time. If you want to sleep from 2 o'clock till 3 o'clock, whatever time it is, well, actually not from 2 till 3, especially not on Wednesdays, but whatever time it might be, you can set yourself to do that and do it every day. Second thing is that you must only go to bed at night time when you are tired. So if you have slept in the day, you probably won't be tired until later on at night. So if you don't have a daytime sleep, you might be tired at, say, 10:30 for the sake of argument. If you do have a sleep in the day, you might be tired at midnight, say. So if you've had your sleep in the day, it's no use going to bed at 10:30 and hoping you're going to go to sleep. That is a paramount rule, that you must only go to bed when you are tired. And the second one relating to this is it's a circadian rhythm. So if you're going to do it every day. See, just an example of that, in Spain, most people have a good long sleep in the daytime. Then if you go to Spanish restaurants, there they are piling in for their evening meal at 11 o'clock at night. So that's quite different from what we do over here. So we can't just lift one bit of what they do and not the other bit.
Does trauma predispose somebody to poor sleep?
Like PTSD and so forth?
Yeah,
absolutely so. It's PTSD and chronic anxiety, chronic, long-lasting, severe anxiety and PTSD are real killers of sleep. And
you've got the slide ready, sorry.
Yeah, well, that was obviously came at the right moment, didn't it? And frankly, I've seen a lot of people with PTSD, and to ask them to sleep 7 hours solid is, you might as well ask for the moon. They're just not going to do that. Remember that one of the symptoms of PTSD is you're hyper alert, hyper vigilant, expecting dangers at any moment. To sleep solidly for 7 hours, that's just not going to happen. And you think, well, even if we do all the best things for their sleep, I wonder what else we could do. And I think what we've just been talking about, having two bites of the cherry, a daytime sleep and a nighttime sleep, is sometimes the very best thing for them. And to split the 7 hours into a 4 and a 3 or a 5 and a 2 or whatever it might be. And that seems to be, it's not ideal, is it? But neither is not having your sleep ideal. So that idea is quite a good one I have found. The other one is the having the idea of the bed as a sanctuary, our sleep as a sanctuary and the bed as a sanctuary. Now, to try and train people, especially people who have chronic anxiety, to see bed and sleep as a sanctuary, a temporary sanctuary, is a really solid idea. And if they can be trained, if they can train themselves to do that, the payoff for them can be absolutely amazing. Or thirdly, to reduce the agitation by other means, we might say what, and we'll have a look at what in a minute. Very good idea, by the way, the one you read out about the breathing a minute ago.
And sorry, we must be reading our minds because a few people were just talking about diaries. And
right. That's a great idea. Yeah, that was a great idea. I love it.
Yeah.
Sleep diary can be absolutely great. And this is what they have now CBT for insomnia. And of course, the diary concept has been lifted straight from CBT. And there's two things you need to record on the diary: how you've slept and what happened the day before. How you've slept is important to record when you sleep well, as well as when you sleep badly, and try and work out the code. But probably the code you're going to work out is almost exactly the kind of things we've been listing up to this point. But even so, it is very important to keep a diary if you can do it.
And I think people were discussing having a journal by the bed to sort of empty your mind before you sleep as well.
Lovely, yes. I think that's doubly nice because it's a nice technique anyway. But it also reminds people that their job is to empty their mind while they're in bed and sleeping. It's not to dwell and brood about the terrible things they've done or to worry about the bad things that might happen. It's to put those to one side. Depression and sleeplessness are linked. Very often, sleeplessness is described as a symptom of depression, but I think that's way oversimplifying it. I've done a little cycle here. If you start with depression up the top there, people who are depressed, by definition, don't do much. Their activity level is depressed. That's the point of depression. If you don't do much, then you're going to have low sleep drive. There's no drive built up if you're not doing much. Then, of course, you're not going to sleep very well because you've got low sleep drive. Then, of course, you're going to wake up tired. Then, of course, you're going to be depressed. You wake up tired, you're not going to do much. It's depressing. And you just go around in that circle forever. But that cycle could be rewritten with doesn't do much in the top slot. It's exactly the same cycle. And remember, the whole point of a circle is you can come in at any point. So if a person doesn't do much, then they have a low sleep drive, then they don't sleep well, then they wake up tired, then they're depressed. So in a sense, the primary thing there is that they don't do much. And people like, for example, Seligman has long advocated, or once used to very enthusiastically advocate that in a sense you almost need to get hold of depressed people and make them do good things that they would enjoy. And it's one of the real problems for depressed people and people who can't sleep, that they don't know what to do to enjoy. They just simply do not know what to do to fill in their time. I was talking to a friend of mine who's a highly intelligent, he's another psychologist, highly intelligent guy and very clued up. And he said, the trouble is, if you don't drink of an evening time, the evenings are so long. I think, well, maybe, but maybe if you find some good things that you enjoy doing, maybe the evenings aren't quite so long. So these things tie up together. So I just want to have a quick troubleshooting. Someone comes in and says, I can't get to sleep. What might you look for? It might be a nice idea if you write in chat. somebody says, I can't get to sleep. Not that I wake up in the middle of the night, but I can't get to sleep. I can't get off to sleep when I go to bed at night. What sort of things would you be looking for?
Just while people are writing, do you have any ideas about nightmares?
Not really. I've had lots of ideas about nightmares, and I've looked at people's work on nightmares and so on. And I think the best thing you can do is to put up with them, and also view them as a sort of how can you say? Normally, people wake up when having a nightmare, and there's clearly the nightmare will be having a function. It'll be doing something for you. It won't just be there just to torture you. It'll be doing something for you, so that's good. And it's also good that the system wakes us up when we've had enough of it. So in a sense, if we can reframe nightmares as somehow doing us good in a way you don't necessarily know quite how, I think that's not far from the truth.
Super. We've got some lovely ideas coming in to ask people here.
Yep.
What do they do right before bed? i.e., are they watching TV or the phone?
Good.
Level of exercise and fresh air.
Yep.
Mindfulness.
Good.
Alcohol.
Lovely.
Changing the routine or physical health issues.
Okay.
Sorry, it's still going on time. Seems to just be non-stop.
Well, it's all good stuff. I've got a clock right by me, which is taunting me.
Yeah, sorry.
It's the most likely answer is the person is going to bed before their sleep drive is built up, or they're dozing off on the sofa, disrupting the sleep drive. They've disrupted the sleep drive and then gone off to bed. Somebody says, I wake up at 3 a.m. What sort of thing are we looking for here? Let me move on. Caffeine half-life is 6 hours. Sleep drive half-life is 3.5 hours. So the caffeine is having its effect much longer than the sleep drive is. So the caffeine, by the time you get to 3 a.m. or whatever, caffeine may well have overtaken the sleep drive by that point and simply wakes you up. A lot of people aren't really affected by caffeine in the sense that it doesn't make them perky and bright, but it does disrupt their sleep, even if they're not perky and bright. And that's kind of deceptive. Also, though, a lot of people have a drive to be awake. In other words, they're anxious and agitated. And that's only overtaken for a short period while the sleep drive overcomes it. But that drive to be awake reasserts itself as that sleep drive weakens. So we'll have a look what to do about that in a minute. Somebody says, I sleep all right, but I'm tired when I wake up. What might we do about that? The very first thing we might look at is whether they're drinking, because that's exactly the effect that alcohol would have. Okay, and in summary, we've actually covered quite a lot. This is what we've covered. Get up at the same time every day. So you might like to take notes for personal relevance, but also to make contributions. If you say, one idea that you've got, make a contribution or ask a question. Get up at the same time every day. Limit caffeine, half an hour's light and exercise in the morning. Go easy on alcohol. Look after the bedroom, have fresh air, quiet, white noise or acceptance. And those who said it should be cool are absolutely right. That's a nice research item. Don't have noise on a long timer. Have a wind down routine. See sleep as a temporary sanctuary. The temporary word is important. It makes the sanctuary element acceptable. Go to bed only when you're tired, ideally at approximately the same time each night. Get to bed before dozing off. Get up if we're awake. Get up at the same time every day. And the FAQs or other issues, use bed mainly for sleep. If we know what is stopping us sleeping, prioritize it. Sleep in the day if you like, but do it at the same time every day, and only go to bed when tired. With PTSD or strong anxiety, maybe 2 sleeps per 24 hours is better than 1, or really to help the person to train themselves to see their bed as a sanctuary. or to reduce the agitation by other means, which I hope we're going to look at in a second. And a sleep diary can be great. Okay.
Sue's got a nice tip. Sue selects a TED talk during the day, and as she lies down to sleep, she listens to it. Only lasts about 10 minutes, but she's never heard the end of it. However, if she can without, she can lie there for hours.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
I know what I particularly like about that is she selects it in advance.
Yeah, it's nice, isn't it?
Yeah.
Zahida does a bit of yoga.
Yeah.
James recalls his childhood bedtime stories, which he finds very relaxing.
Yeah.
Fitbits are good at gaining insights into your sleep habits and sleep cycle.
Yeah.
And the sleep casts on the Headspace app are really useful.
Yes. I think some of the apps are really top rate, actually. Headspace, I think, is probably the leading one. Not for me to advertise Headspace, but I do think they got some very good stuff there.
And Kim says that starting crafting or crochet is mindful during the evening, and you've got something that is tangible as well.
Fantastic. A lot of people report visualizing stuff. For example, you visualize the crochet you're doing, helps them to sleep. Okay, let's have a look at relaxation and mindfulness audio, because this is a nice quick slide for a very, very important thing. Several people have mentioned relaxation and mindfulness to bring down the anxiety, whether for sleep or for anything else. It's a biological intervention. And there's one fantastic source, credit to Mark Williams and credit to his publisher, which is Penguin Random House. If you search online for Mark Williams Penguin Random House, you will find a series of 8 free mindfulness meditations. Really good, really good. There's good mindfulness meditations you'll find anywhere. Like you were just saying, Headspace also has some really good things, including one that addresses acceptance of noise. Remember, acceptance is an element of mindfulness. And if people can accept noise, that is a fantastic thing to be able to do. And then there are 3 different sorts of relaxation audios that I have done on moodmaster.co.uk/relaxation. Those are also free. One's a mindfulness, one is guided imagery. Like James mentioned a moment ago about he imagined the childhood stories he had. That kind of guided imagery, or almost guided audio maybe, bit of both there, is really nice. And the third one is progressive muscle relaxation. And if you go to moodmaster.co.uk, you've got to put the /relaxation and they come up, they're all free there. So now, this is what somebody mentioned earlier on. I'm sorry, I can't remember the name, but they mentioned a very important thing. They were talking about, the TIP acronym stands for temperature, particularly in my scheme of things. And the P's are, paired muscle relaxation and paced breathing, which was the one that one of our colleagues mentioned, paced breathing, in for so many, out for so many. The I stands for, just while we're at it, intense exercise. But the one that's interesting me at the moment, and there seems to be a lot of discussion and sort of talk about it at the moment and research on it, is the cold, where the T in TIP stands for temperature. And what Marshall Linehan suggests is you put cold water and ice all over your face and all over yourself if you want to. Big alteration in the temperature. A lot of people go wild swimming, and one of the main things about that is it is so cold. And then if you go on the web and look at the Nordic morning routine, you'll see people breaking the ice to jump into the water beneath. Now, what fascinates me about this is the idea behind it is that you kind of use reset, as somebody said earlier on. It's an endeavor to reset the nervous system, if you like, sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous systems. And that is what a lot of people would love to be able to do. You know how they talk about, fight and flight and being ready for a bear and running away or fighting the bear and all that kind of stuff. Basically, some people have their nervous system set on red alert almost permanently. And a lot of people strive to switch the wretched thing off. And one of the ways people go about doing it is this very cold water. So I have to say, I've never tried it myself, but it doesn't look very inviting to me. And I fear that people will jump in and have a heart attack or something like that. But even so, there's a lot of people doing this. And I'm always kind of suspicious of a lot of things that a lot of people do. You think, well, maybe there is something in this. And it is actually being researched right now, even as we speak. And so it's going to be interesting. And if you'd like to try that, then tell us how you get on.
Could you explain what the TIP stands for again, please?
Oh yeah, it's an acronym. It's from DBT, Marsha Linehan's DBT. T is for temperature, and she means cold, alter your temperature with ice and water, cold. I can't remember what did I say I was for. Oh, intense exercise. Intense exercise. It's not a very good acronym because you'd hope that it stood for exercise. Now, I is for intense exercise. First P is for paced breathing, as in, into 5, hold for 3, out for 7, that sort of thing. And the second P is paired relaxation, where you pair muscle relaxation with your breathing. Okay.
Super.
Now, we're still on, the whole session is on biological interventions, remember? So diet is very important. And there's very little to be said about diet, but it is important, it turns out. And there's lots of people doing lots of research, and it turns out it is actually important for our mental health. On the other hand, we don't want to be too kind of hung up on diet, but there's several things. One is that different people do have sensitivities, not allergies necessarily, but things that don't have a good effect on them. And if you know that you have sensitivities that don't have a good effect on you, then obviously it's a good idea to take notice of that. Don't totally avoid what you're sensitive to, otherwise you get more sensitive, but limit it. Second thing seems to be that to have good food diversity, don't stick to the same meal every day. Have as much diversity as you can is important. And the third thing that everyone seems to be agreed on is that wherever possible, it's good to have unprocessed food so you know what you're eating. Okay, well, this is the other big one. I'm not sure whether we're going to have time for this one. Let me just pull out one slide. Let's have this one. If you're trying to sort out an alcohol issue, then be aware that it is an addictive substance. So if we are addicted to it, it's not our fault. It's entirely the substance's fault. It's an addictive substance. And if we want to break away from it, we need a really solid roadmap, a step-by-step plan. And we probably need to agree it with whoever we live with, if we live with somebody. Probably needs to be a joint enterprise. And that way, it's amazing what people can do. And the other bit of good news is William Miller, who's researched this, he's motivational interviewing, as in Miller and Rolnick. He's researched this really, really well. And one of the findings that comes out of it is that it is amazing, even if you've got substantial alcohol problems, it's amazing what you can do without professional help. So the important thing is that you do need a plan. To say that I'm going to give up alcohol isn't a plan, it's an aspiration. You need a step-by-step plan as to how you're going to achieve that and agree it with the person you live with and really go for it wholeheartedly. And I think, oh yes, apart from to say that exercise is really good, actually, if people said what exercise they do, it would be very useful, I think, because walking seems to be totally sufficient. Outdoor exercise seems to come out really well. And even home-based exercise without any necessity for a gym is really good too. So, Ames, I feel as though I've been talking a bit too much, so people
No, that's super.
Yeah.
So, so you're okay. So just to say that if you'd like any more information on our courses, go to apt.ac. But as always, the event is completely free of charge as our response to COVID-19 and its variants. But we love you attending, so thank you very much. And feel free to invite others to future events. So we're not so sure how many free sessions we'll be hosting. It depends on a couple of things, how long COVID lasts and how much interest there is. But it's lovely to see so many hundreds of you here, even though it's Easter holidays. So love, love, love. So we hope to carry on for a bit longer. As Will says, we will be doing what is motivational interviewing next week, and a certificate of attendance will be emailed you by the end of the week. So if you haven't got it, have a look in the junk box. Okay, have you got anything, Will?
No, that's brilliant. So the next session in this series will be in 2 weeks' time when we look at behaviour. Fantastic. No, thanks, everybody.
All right, nice to see you. I'll see you next week.
Thanks, James.
Bye.